If you're just joining us, we're discussing the tragic case of a young man named Khalif Browder. He was arrested when he was 16 years old for allegedly stealing a backpack. He spent 3 years locked up at Rikers, and 2 of those years he was locked up in solitary. He was never able to cope with what he experienced, and on Saturday, he committed suicide. Joining me to talk about Browder's case, the CNN legal analyst Mel Robbins and prosecutor Wendy Patrick. I think the first reaction that most people would have is, how on earth is a 16-year-old sent to Rikers for 3 years? Isn't he a juvie? Doesn't he have some kind of protection from being in solitary? How on earth do we have a speedy trial right in the Constitution, and yet this happened?
Well, you know, yes to all of those things, one would think. One of the things I want to focus on, Ashleigh, because it was the bane of my existence when I was a public defender representing clients in the New York court system, going to Rikers almost every other week to visit clients to prepare for cases, is the speedy trial rule. Basically, what the speedy trial rule says is that if you're charged with a felony in the state of New York, as he was, you have 6 months as a prosecutor to be ready for trial. But here's what happens. Prosecutors show up in court and they say, "Judge, we're ready." And then the defense attorney says, "Well, Judge, we're ready too, but we don't have all of the evidence yet. They haven't turned it over." The judge then says, "Okay, well, we will postpone trial for a later date." And then months, if not a year worth of postponements, motions, arguing over the evidence in the case happens before a case ever goes to trial. Because the law, Ashleigh, only requires being ready. It has nothing to do with the trial actually happen. And that's one of the big problems here.
So, I have so many questions about this. And I guess, Wendy, just if people are looking from other states at what happened in New York at Rikers, is this a problem unique to Rikers, to New York, to bad funding and backlogs and cases they just can't get to, and delays that, you know, these lawyers are requesting a week delay and instead it ends up being a 6-week delay? Does it happen everywhere else?
It does, and I began my career as a public defender, so I share your experiences there. But I got to tell you, I've also prosecuted prison crimes against inmates, and even if this young man had been tried and convicted, we may very well be here having the same discussion because of some of the things we saw on that videotape. Due to the delay, because that's the first issue, justice delayed is justice denied. The second issue is we as the state take an oath to protect the folks that we house within our correctional institutions. And when you get somebody that's treated like this, whether or not they're guilty or innocent, we have serious concerns about reform, and that's only beginning to happen
now. And
now.
we're talking about people that we have a duty to protect if they're in, you know, custody. And you can say what you want about prisoners. They certainly enjoy the lowest status, it seems, no matter what the argument. But this is a kid.
Right,
this is a 16-year-old kid who was beaten relentlessly by gang members. A guard even slammed him. The family of this young man, they've launched a lawsuit, Mel, and they're suing for false arrest, malicious prosecution, and being denied a speedy trial. Do they have grounds? Do they have a case?
Well, I think you certainly have a case. Whether or not it'll be successful is another matter.
Why?
Well, this is an egregious situation for sure, but you got to look also. He was a YO, youthful offender. So while he might not have had a public record, he was on probation. So one of the first
things... You mean
things...
before he got arrested this time,
Correct.
he had a prior incident, he was on probation.
Correct.
It changes the game.
It does, and let me tell you why. And this will make so many people so angry, but if he was on probation, it could have easily triggered a probationary hold, which means you're not going anywhere while this other case is pending. And so then you can't file for a writ of habeas corpus, because in the state of New York, you can only file a petition with the judge to be released if you would qualify for immediate release if it were granted. So there's so much to sort out, but you've got mental health issues. He's 16 years old. He's in solitary confinement, which means if he has an attorney like Wendy or me, we can't even really get to him. He's also only 16, so he doesn't understand his legal rights. Right. And so you've got this casserole of horrible things that happened. I think you'll see a massive settlement. Whether or not it goes to trial, that's another.
The lawsuit is also, I think, preventing us from getting the information we otherwise would get in a case like this. Because remember, the lawsuit was filed in 2013. So the free flow of information we see in cases like this hasn't occurred. That's why we're getting it bits and pieces day by day.
So I do want to add that, you know, solitary sometimes is punitive and solitary sometimes is protective. And in his case, we do know that certain cases of his commitment in solitary was punitive because he'd been fighting or arguing or, you know, getting into scuffles. I just don't know how much of it was protective, given that he was so badly abused. I have to leave it there, but I think it's not the last we're hearing this case. Wendy, Mel, stand by, and thank you for that. So this just in, by the way, from one of the from the Rikers controversy, there is yet another controversy at Rikers. Federal prosecutors just announcing that 2 former guards there and 1 current guard have been arrested, and they've been charged with the 2012 beating of an inmate named Ronald Spear. 2 of the accused are expected in federal court sometime today. The third one is apparently cooperating with the authorities. He pleaded guilty earlier this week to obstructing justice. I'm going to keep you posted on that case. You know, those thousands and thousands and thousands of untested rape kits that you keep hearing about across the country, just sitting in evidence rooms for decades collecting dust? Well, there is one county finally doing something about it, and you will not believe the results. We're going to tell you next.